It was a summer night that would forever be etched in my memory. The kind of night where the heat seemed to cling to your skin and every breath felt heavy with possibility. I had just walked through the door, drained from another grueling day at work. My mind too occupied to notice anything unusual at first. But there he was, Aiden, my husband, sitting on the couch with a glass of whiskey in his hand. His gaze fixed on me in a way that sent a shiver down my spine. "Long day?" he asked, his voice low and smooth, carrying a warmth that immediately cut through my exhaustion. I nodded, dropping my bag on the floor with a sigh. "You could say that," I replied, but he didn't seem to hear me. Instead, his focus was unwavering, his eyes holding a spark that felt both thrilling and a little dangerous. Before I could say another word, he leaned forward, his hand resting on my thigh, his touch deliberate, lingering. It wasn't the first time Aiden had been affectionate after a long day, but tonight felt different. There was an intensity in his movements, a quiet insistence that made the air between us hum with electricity. "You've been on my mind all day," he murmured, his fingers tracing slow circles on my leg. I met his gaze, my heart racing, as if drawn into some unspoken invitation I didn't fully understand yet. There was a hunger in his eyes, a raw desire that was both exciting and disarming. And then, out of nowhere, he said it, something so audacious, so unexpected, that for a moment I thought I had misheard him. But the way he looked at me, the way his words hung in the air, left no room for doubt. It wasn't just an idea. It was a fantasy he wanted to bring to life. I should have been shocked, appalled even, but instead, I felt something stir deep inside me, a curiosity that I couldn't ignore. His words painted a picture in my mind that left me breathless. And as the night unfolded, what began as a whisper of possibility soon became a plunge into the unknown, one that would change everything. That sultry night, with its mix of apprehension, allure, and exhilaration, would mark the beginning of something neither of us could have predicted. And as I look back, I still wonder, was it the summer air, or something more, that pushed us to the edge and beyond? "I've been thinking," Aiden began, his voice barely above a whisper as he leaned closer to me, the warmth of his breath brushing my skin. "About us, about what we need." His words sent a ripple of unease and excitement through me, and I shifted slightly in my seat, unsure of where this was heading. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice trembling, the tension between us thick enough to touch. Aiden's lips curved into a slow, deliberate smile as his hand slid higher up my thigh. His eyes never left mine, and the hunger in them was unmistakable. "I think it's time we tried something different," he murmured, his voice low and edged with seduction. "Something to bring us closer, something unforgettable." I swallowed hard, a knot forming in my stomach as my heart raced. "Spice things up," I echoed, unsure of his meaning but feeling the weight of it in the air. He nodded, his lips grazing my neck, sending a shiver down my spine. "I want to see you with other men," he whispered, the words tumbling into the quiet room like a thunderclap. My body froze as shockwaves rippled through me. I pulled back, my mind spinning, searching his face for any trace of hesitation, some sign that he wasn't serious. But all I found was desire, raw, unapologetic, and unrelenting. You want me to be with other men?" I stammered, my voice barely audible. Aiden's gaze darkened, the intensity in his eyes stealing my breath. "Yes," he said, his voice firm yet tender. "But not just any men. I want you to experience something new, something thrilling. I want you to be with 3 strong, handsome black men. I want to see you let go, to lose yourself in the moment, to feel something you've never felt before." His words landed like a spark on dry tinder, igniting a whirlwind of emotions inside me. I could barely think, my mind racing with a million thoughts. This was a side of Aiden I had never seen before, a fantasy I had never even imagined. I had always thought of us as secure, stable, but this was something else entirely, something wild, something untamed. "Aiden, I don't know," I stammered, shifting uncomfortably as a wave of heat coursed through my body, my cheeks flushing with a mix of shock and intrigue. I couldn't deny the way his words had affected me. the way my heart pounded, and how a small, forbidden part of me was drawn to the idea. Aiden reached for my hand, his touch steady and reassuring. "I know it's unexpected. I know it sounds crazy," he said, his voice soft yet filled with conviction. "But I promise you, it'll be incredible. You'll feel things you've never felt before. And I'll be right there, watching you, cherishing you. There's nothing to fear. I just want to see you happy, free." His words wrapped around me like a seductive spell, and I found myself caught in the gravity of his desire. Could I really do this? Could I let myself go? Explore something so daring, so forbidden? The thought felt both terrifying and exhilarating. And yet, deep inside, there was a spark, a part of me that longed to break free from the mundane, to feel desired and alive in a way I hadn't in years. The idea lingered, pulling at me, tempting me to step into the unknown. Would I dare take that leap, to embrace something so taboo, so thrilling? I searched Aiden's eyes, looking for even the slightest flicker of doubt, any sign that he wasn't completely sure about what he was asking of me. But all I found was unwavering confidence. He wanted this. He wanted me to do this. And as much as I tried to fight it, the thought of giving him what he desired, of stepping into this forbidden fantasy, sent a rush of adrenaline coursing through me. "Okay," I whispered, my voice so soft I barely recognized it as my own. "I'll do it." Aiden's face lit up with excitement, his eyes blazing with anticipation. He leaned in to kiss me, his lips warm and tender against mine, a kiss filled with gratitude and something more, an electric promise of what was to come. "You won't regret this," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion and exhilaration. The days leading up to the night Aiden had planned were a whirlwind of emotions. Excitement and nerves twisted together, creating a tension I couldn't escape. Every time I thought about what lay ahead, my stomach flipped, a mixture of anxiety and forbidden curiosity coursing through me. I tried to lose myself in my daily routine, to focus on the mundane, but the anticipation was a constant hum in the back of my mind, teasing me, taunting me with possibilities I couldn't fully imagine. And then, the night arrived. Aiden had taken care of every detail, orchestrating the evening with precision and care. The men he had chosen were already waiting for us at the hotel. As we stepped into the room, my heart pounded in my chest, my palms damp with nerves. I hesitated, the enormity of what I was about to do sinking in. But then I saw them. 3 men stood before us, their presence commanding the space. They were tall, impossibly handsome, their muscular physiques accentuated by the soft, dim light of the room. Their dark skin gleamed with an almost magnetic allure, and their confident smiles hinted at unspoken promises. Each of them exuded power, strength, and something else, an undeniable intensity that made the air feel electric. I could feel their eyes on me, assessing me, undressing me with their gazes. My breath hitched, and for a moment, I felt completely exposed, vulnerable under their watchful eyes. But then, something shifted inside me. That vulnerability morphed into a strange, unexpected sense of empowerment. For the first time, I wasn't just Aiden's wife or the woman who played it safe. I was someone new, standing on the edge of something wild and unknown. Aiden stepped closer, his hand resting on the small of my back, steadying me as my nerves threatened to take over. "Don't be shy," he whispered, his voice filled with encouragement, his excitement palpable. "This is for you. I want you to let go. I want you to enjoy it." His words wrapped around me like a warm embrace, both soothing and igniting something deep within. As I stood there, poised on the precipice of a night that would change everything, I felt my fears begin to melt away, replaced by a thrilling sense of freedom. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing for certain. This was a moment I would never forget. I glanced up at Aiden, my heart pounding in my chest, and caught the hunger in his eyes. He wanted this. He wanted to see me with these men, to watch me give in to something wild and forbidden. And as nervous as I was, I couldn't deny the spark of desire building within me. A part of me wanted this too, wanted to feel the thrill of letting go. With a deep breath, I took a hesitant step forward, my body trembling with a mix of anticipation and excitement. The three men stood before me, their eyes locked on me, dark and intense with desire. The energy in the room was electric, the air thick with tension, and I could feel it wrapping around me, pulling me toward the edge of something entirely new, something exhilarating. The first man moved closer, his hand reaching out to brush against my arm. The sensation was like a current, sending a shiver through my body. His touch was firm but gentle, and I found myself leaning into him instinctively. My breath caught as his fingers traced the length of my arm, his touch igniting sparks along my skin. His eyes met mine, and in them, I saw a reflection of the fire building inside me, raw, unfiltered need. Before I could process what was happening, his lips were on mine, soft and inviting. The kiss was tender at first, exploratory, but quickly grew more insistent, more consuming. He pulled me closer, his strong arms wrapping around me, grounding me and setting me alight all at once. I melted into him, my hands instinctively finding their way to his chest, tracing the hard lines of muscle beneath his shirt. His warmth surrounded me, his scent, his presence, overwhelming my senses. Behind me, I could feel Aiden's gaze, heavy and burning, as though he were part of this moment, connected to me even as I surrendered to another man's embrace. I glanced over my shoulder, catching his eyes, and the look on his face sent a thrill through me, a mix of excitement and approval that only fueled the fire in my veins. He wanted this. He wanted me like this. The realization gave me a strange sense of liberation, a freedom I hadn't known I craved. The second man stepped forward then, his presence a magnetic pull I couldn't resist. His hand slid around my waist, drawing me closer, and I felt his body press against mine from behind. His heat surrounded me, his breath soft and teasing against my neck. He lowered his lips to my skin, kissing me there, his movements slow and deliberate. A shiver ran down my spine as his touch sent waves of sensation through me. I was caught between them now, their bodies enclosing me, their hands and lips exploring. As my mind spun with the intensity of it all, the world outside the room ceased to exist, and all that remained was the heat, the electricity, and the intoxicating thrill of surrendering to something I never thought I'd experience. My body trembled, my breath came in shallow gasps, and I knew there was no turning back. This was the moment I had stepped into, and I was ready to let it consume me. I had never felt anything like this before, this overwhelming, almost dizzying sensation of being desired, of being wanted so completely, not just by one man, but by three. It was intoxicating, a heady mix of power and vulnerability that threatened to sweep me away. My body reacted instinctively, surrendering to their every touch, every kiss, as though I had been waiting for this moment my entire life. Through the haze of sensation, Aiden's voice cut through, grounding me. "You're beautiful," he whispered, his tone thick with emotion and raw desire. "I love seeing you like this." His words hit me like a spark, igniting a confidence I didn't know I possessed. I turned my attention back to the men surrounding me, their touches growing more insistent, their hunger palpable. They moved closer, their bodies pressing against mine, enveloping me in their heat. It was overwhelming and thrilling all at once, a warmth I hadn't realized I craved, spreading through me and leaving me breathless. Their hands roamed my body, exploring, claiming. Each touch was like a ripple of electricity, sending wave after wave of sensation through me. My breathing quickened as I felt myself surrendering, not just to them, but to the moment, to this new, exhilarating version of myself. For the first time, I was the center of everything, the focus of their unbridled desire. It was empowering, electrifying, and completely consuming. The man in front of me slid his hand to the small of my back, pulling me closer until there was no space left between us. Our bodies were flush, and I could feel the hard, undeniable evidence of his need pressing against me. His breath was hot and ragged against my cheek as he leaned in, his lips claiming mine again. This time, there was no hesitation, no gentleness. His kiss was fierce, hungry, like he was devouring me, and I melted into it, letting him take what he wanted. His tongue parted my lips, deepening the kiss, and I could feel the urgency in the way his hands gripped my hips, pulling me against him as though he couldn't get close enough. Every movement, every touch was charged with raw, unrestrained need, and I felt myself spiraling further into the moment. Behind me, the second man's hand slid up my sides, his touch deliberate and commanding. His fingers traced the curve of my waist, lingering for a moment before moving higher. His hands cupped my breasts through the thin fabric of my dress, his touch sending a shiver racing through me. His fingers were firm yet teasing, his thumbs brushing over my nipples with just enough pressure to make me gasp. The jolt of pleasure was instantaneous, radiating through me and leaving me trembling with desire. In that moment, I was completely immersed, caught in a whirlwind of sensation and emotion. I could feel the strength of their bodies, the heat of their skin, the intensity of their desire, and it was intoxicating. Every touch, every kiss, every whispered word pulled me deeper into a place I had never been before, a place I didn't want to leave. I could feel the tension building inside me, a tight coil of desire winding tighter with every second. The air was thick with anticipation, each moment pulling me further into the intoxicating energy of the room. Aiden was still there, his presence anchoring me even as I felt myself being swept away. His gaze never left mine, and in his eyes, I saw everything: raw hunger, excitement, and the deep, unspoken bond we shared. He wasn't just a bystander, he was part of this, woven into the electric connection between me and these men. "You're breathtaking," the third man murmured, stepping closer. His voice was low and velvety, his words sending a shiver down my spine. His fingers traced a slow, deliberate line down my arm, his touch igniting sparks on my skin. "I've been waiting to feel you, to touch you," he continued, his tone heavy with meaning. "Your skin is softer than I imagined." His words wrapped around me, and my body responded before my mind could catch up. I leaned back into him as his arms slid around my waist, holding me with a firm yet tender grip. Their touches weren't just caresses, they were claims, declarations of desire that made me feel like I belonged completely to this moment. I felt myself surrendering, letting go of any hesitation, and sinking deeper into the overwhelming sensations coursing through me. Every inch of my body was alive, tingling under their hands as they explored me, their movements deliberate and intoxicating. The man behind me leaned down, his lips brushing against my neck, planting soft kisses that sent waves of pleasure rippling through me. His teeth grazed the sensitive skin, a teasing nip that made me gasp. My head tilting to give him better access, his hands slid lower, traveling over my hips and down my thighs before slipping beneath the hem of my dress. His touch was both gentle and commanding, igniting a fire that burned hotter with every passing second. "Do you like this?" he whispered against my skin, his voice dark and smooth, filled with seductive promise. "Tell us how it feels." I love it," I admitted, my voice trembling under the weight of my desire. The confession spilled out of me, raw and unfiltered, and it was the truest thing I had ever said. I had never felt anything like this before. This intoxicating blend of passion and power, of surrender and liberation. It wasn't just the intensity of their touch. It was the way they made me feel completely seen, completely desired. It was as though they were unlocking something deep inside me, something primal and fierce, something I hadn't realized I was missing. I could feel the heat pooling low in my belly, the ache of need becoming almost unbearable. The man in front of me smiled, his eyes dark with mischief and intent. His hand slid up my back, his fingers tangling gently in my hair. He pulled me closer, his movements slow and deliberate, as though savoring every moment. When his lips found mine again, the kiss was different this time, not rushed, but measured. His mouth moved against mine with teasing precision, coaxing me into the moment, making me feel every second, every sensation. It wasn't just about touch anymore. It was about connection, intensity, and the exhilarating freedom of giving myself over to the unknown. Every kiss, every caress pulled me deeper into a place I never wanted to leave, a place where desire reigned, and I felt more alive than ever before. The tenderness of his touch contrasted sharply with the hunger burning inside me. His free hand cradled my face, his thumb brushing softly across my cheek as he deepened the kiss. I moaned softly against his lips, lost in the intoxicating sensations. Behind me, the other man's fingers continued their slow, teasing exploration, grazing the sensitive skin of my thighs but never venturing where I needed him most. Each touch was a promise, each pause a deliberate denial that made my breath hitch and my body ache with longing. My breaths came in ragged gasps, the anticipation unbearable. He was drawing it out, every second winding the tension tighter until it felt like I might unravel completely. "Please," I whispered, my voice trembling and barely audible, but filled with desperate need. "Please don't stop." The man behind me chuckled softly, his warm breath ghosting over my neck as he pressed a tender kiss to my shoulder. "We're not stopping," he promised, his voice a low, velvety growl that sent a shiver through me. "We're just getting started." His words ignited a deeper fire in my core, the knot of desire coiling tighter with every moment. My body trembled, caught in the exquisite tension between the need for release and the delicious thrill of anticipation. It was a kind of hunger I had never felt before, primal, consuming, and impossible to ignore. The man in front of me broke our kiss, his lips lingering for a heartbeat before he pulled back slightly. His dark eyes locked onto mine, a mischievous smile curving his lips as he took me in. "You're incredible," he murmured, his voice rich with admiration and something deeper. "I can't wait to see how you feel." Before I could respond, he moved with smooth, fluid precision, his hand slipping the straps of my dress from my shoulders. The fabric slid down my body like water, pooling at my feet in a soft whisper. I was left standing there in nothing but my underwear, the air cool against my skin, my heart pounding as their eyes roamed over me. But instead of feeling exposed or embarrassed, I felt powerful. The way they looked at me, hungry, unfiltered, utterly captivated, made me feel like the most beautiful woman in the world. Their gazes worshipped every inch of me, each glance igniting sparks of confidence that burned away any lingering doubts. The man behind me traced a line up my spine with his fingertips, his touch sending a shiver through me. "You're breathtaking," he murmured, his voice reverent. The words wrapped around me like a caress, adding to the growing fire in my veins. The man in front of me stepped closer again, his lips brushing against mine in a kiss that was softer now, more deliberate, teasing me with its gentleness even as the hunger in his eyes promised more. Every touch, every look, every whispered word reminded me that this wasn't just about desire. It was about letting go, about embracing a side of myself I'd never allowed to surface. In that moment, surrounded by their heat and their hands, I felt more alive than I ever had before. I could feel Aiden's eyes on me, his gaze heavy with pride and raw desire. The way he watched me, the way his presence filled the room, only added to the fire burning inside me. His approval, his encouragement, it wasn't just comforting, it was intoxicating, fueled my need, making me want this moment even more, making me want to lose myself completely. The second man stepped forward, his hands resting firmly on my waist as he guided me toward the bed. "Lie down," he said, his voice soft but commanding, each word dripping with promise. "We're going to make you feel so good." I obeyed, my heart racing with a mix of nerves and anticipation as I sank back onto the soft sheets. My body trembled, every nerve alight with desire as the three men surrounded me. Their hands and lips moved over me, exploring, teasing, worshipping. It was overwhelming in the best way, a symphony of sensations that made my head spin and my body ache for more. One of them leaned down, capturing my lips in a deep, consuming kiss. His hand tangled in my hair as his body pressed against mine, hard and warm beneath my touch. Another kissed my neck, his lips trailing a line of fire down to my chest, while the third man's hand skimmed over my legs, his fingers tracing slow, deliberate patterns on my skin. It was sensory overload, an intoxicating storm of touch, taste, and heat that left me breathless. I couldn't think, couldn't focus on anything except the pleasure they were giving me. Every caress, every kiss, every whispered word pulled me further into the moment, and I surrendered to it completely, letting the sensations take over. Through the haze of pleasure, Aiden's voice reached me, soft yet filled with emotion. "You're incredible," he said, his words cutting through the haze like a beacon. "I love seeing you like this." His approval, his desire, made everything more intense, more thrilling. Knowing he was watching, that he wanted this as much as I did, sent waves of excitement through me. I wanted to please him, to give him what he wanted, and the knowledge that he was enjoying every moment only heightened my pleasure. One of the men leaned in, his lips brushing against mine in a kiss that was softer this time, unhurried and tender. His hands moved over my body, sliding down my sides with reverent care. "You're so beautiful," he murmured against my lips, his voice thick with desire. The words felt like a caress, as warm and electric as his touch. In that moment, I wasn't just being touched, I was being adored, celebrated, and cherished, and I let myself bask in it, savoring every second of the exquisite, overwhelming intensity that surrounded me. "I want to make you feel even better," one of them whispered, his voice rich and full of promise. I didn't think it was possible. My body was already overwhelmed, teetering on the edge of everything I thought I could handle. And yet, just as I thought the pleasure had reached its peak, they proved me wrong. They pushed me further, beyond what I thought was possible, sending me spiraling into a realm of bliss so intense that I couldn't even form words. My body trembled uncontrollably, my breath spilling out in broken, ragged gasps. I let go completely of thought, of control, of everything but the sheer sensation. The world dissolved, leaving only the overwhelming feeling of being utterly and completely desired. It was more than I had ever expected, more than I could have imagined. The intensity of the moment left me breathless and weightless, floating in a state of pure satisfaction. As the tidal wave of pleasure began to recede, I lay there, my chest heaving as I tried to catch my breath. Around me, the men who had taken me to heights I'd never dreamed of were still there, their touches softening into gentle caresses. Their warmth surrounded me, grounding me as we all began to descend from the exhilarating high of the experience. My mind was a blur, still reeling from the intensity of it all. But beneath the haze, I felt something deeper, a profound sense of satisfaction. It wasn't just physical pleasure, though that had been beyond anything I'd ever experienced. It was the emotional connection, the deep sense of being desired so wholly and completely. And it wasn't just about them. It was about Aiden too, knowing that he had wanted this for me, that he had orchestrated this moment out of love and trust, made it all the more profound. I turned my head, catching Aiden's gaze. The look in his eyes stopped my heart, a mix of pride, love, and admiration that said more than words ever could. He moved closer to me, his presence as steady and reassuring as ever. His hand brushed the side of my face, tender and reverent, as he leaned down to press a soft, lingering kiss to my lips. "You were amazing," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. His words weren't just praise, they were a testament to the depth of his feelings. I knew this would be unforgettable, but you were more than I ever dreamed. His words filled me with a deep sense of love and gratitude, wrapping around me like a warm embrace. I reached up, touching his face, my heart swelling with emotion. In that moment, I realized something profound. This wasn't just about fulfilling a fantasy. It wasn't just about pleasure, though that had been extraordinary. This was about trust, about stepping into the unknown together, fully giving myself over to the moment because I knew I was cherished, adored, and safe. As I lay there, surrounded by the warmth of the men who had taken me to a place I never imagined, and the man I loved who had made it all possible, I felt a sense of closeness I hadn't expected. We had crossed into uncharted territory together, and instead of creating distance, it had only brought us closer. This was love, raw, fearless, and unshakable. And I knew that from this night forward, we would never be the same, in the best way possible.